Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining Changing Conversations this evening. Amidst uncertainty, it is very important to continue to celebrate the work of one another and of ourselves. And that's what we're hopefully going to be doing this evening for the next about 90 minutes. Before we get started, just to anchor you on our theme, we are celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage and women leaders leading through adversity. And we have an amazing panel of women leaders joining us today. Before we begin, let's go over some norms. So you're going to see the slide that's going to give us some instructions. Oh, first of all, so we want to congratulate the new Latina superintendent, Hilda Maldonado. Yay! One more Latina superintendent. And she's joining us today, so we will hear from her as well as the other panelists in just a few minutes. So moving on to the norms, in your screen, you will see something to this effect. We need you to select the language, interpretation, and because this is a bilingual session, we need you to select either English or Spanish. We do have a Spanish-speaking presenter. There will be English translation, but there will also be closed caption. Remember, there's a Q&A box, so please make sure to use that to enter your questions, and this session will be recorded. So just giving you that information. So you know that. And those are our norms for now. And now I'm going to pass it on to our fabulous education champion, Monica Garcia.
Hello, hello, buenas tardes a todos. I'm so excited to be with all of you. As you know, Changing Conversations started some years ago when we heard the world need more women to tell their stories, more women to learn from each other, more women and leaders to unite in the solidarity of being leaders, of being learners, and of responding to the changing world around us. So thank you, Ana Ponce. I will add my congratulations to our fearless friend, Hilda Maldonado, that has been one of our speakers here in our circle and has just lifted great work in LA. We're sorry to see her go, but she has left LA better than she has found us. And now she will go share her love with folks over in Santa Barbara. For today, I can tell you we have wonderful leaders, women who are sharing their stories, perspectives, and insights with us. We're going to hear from Dr. Rita Ledesma. She is a professor emeritus of child and family studies at Cal State LA. And many of you have heard Dr. Ledesma here in our circle before as well. She is one of the children's students of 1968, and she has her story inside and outside of LA Unified, and we are super excited that she is with us. Hilda Maldonado will be with us today. We also have a fabulous principal from Eagle Rock High School, and she is a mom, and she is a leader, and she is a learner. Mylene Kipe is with us. And we have a fabulous Wilson grad of some years ago, Jennifer Maldonado, is one of our East Side leaders. She is more of a near peer strategy, but anyone who has heard Jennifer speak, maybe at an ICS dinner or maybe at the Board of Supervisors, you know Jennifer's voice is filled with the Si Se Puede that we want for all students. She is a program associate for the Funders Collaborative on Youth Organizing. We also have a woman who challenged all of us. Where are our certificated voices? Ana Reyes is also a fabulous leader inside of LA Unified. She works for the Early Childhood Education Division as an administrative assistant. Ana will share her stories, but I met her as the woman who supports superintendents to be fabulous when she was part of Richard Alonso's team way back when. And also, everybody knows the woo of the Roosevelt of the Roosevelt Parent Center, the one and only Ana Alvarenga. She is the parent and community
Okay.
representative from Roosevelt High School. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to just tell everybody here, and I see that we've got near 100 participants. Ladies, I hope, my wish for you is as we think about, bring it into focus, 100 years of women having the right to vote. And yes, this is an election year. Yes, it is a census year. And yes, women are leading organizations, families, school districts, colleges, so many struggles. We need to remember it's not about them over there, it's about us right here. I also want to just lift that inside of education, we are a female rich industry. And yet we need to help remind each other, step up when the opportunity calls for a leader. Step up when there's a void. Step up when nobody else is stepping up, because your voices are so important to the class of 33 that comes into our kindergarten next year, to those seniors today and those seniors tomorrow. So I have been blessed as a board member for LA Unified, as a daughter of the East Side, as the second of 5 children to Manuel and Guillermina Garcia, as a Berkeley graduate, as a USC graduate. I have been blessed to be inspired by lots and lots and lots of women who every day are saying, how do we include more? How do we lift our community? What can we do to address? So as today, when we are beginning the celebration of the 2020 graduates, as we are concluding May, that is the year, the month we dedicate to mothers of all kinds of love. I want to just invite you to see yourself as one of the women that feeds our community, nourishes our community, and is essential to our community. Muchísimas gracias. We're going to continue on there. Do we have to go through the question and answers, or are we going straight to questions, Ms. Ponce?
No, we're going to go straight to questions, and then we'll go to the Q&A towards the end. So the format, Monica and I will be moderators. I will start and then hand it off to Monica. For our panelists, the first 2 questions are going to be for all of you, so that we get to know you as leaders and as women, and so some of the adversity and how you have overcome that. And then Monica will get into more specific questions. Our first question is, share pieces of your journey that tested and shaped your leadership. And to facilitate the process, I'm going to call you so that we could move it along. So we'll start with Ana Reyes. You are popping up first on my screen, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
I wasn't expecting to be first. I wasn't. Sorry about that delay. Thank you. And I thought really hard about what to share. I find that what we've been through, I've been through as a child, a young adult, you realize quickly how everyone hasn't lived that lifestyle. And I think I've decided that I'm going to just to be completely honest and really tell it how it was. So I'm a Pico Union product, a community infested with drugs, gang, prostitution. It was the Rampart scandal and all of those other things. We were also, immigrant families, very typical to, move into that community. But we're also bused. We were, the high school students in LA didn't have very many high schools. We didn't have choices. We didn't have the opportunity that many other communities had, living in that area and in that time. So I was bused to Taft High School for 4 years, from Pico Union to Woodland Hills on the yellow buses every day, which if you weren't at your bus stop at 6:30 in the morning, you didn't have class that day. If you participated for any means in anything at the school, that meant you got home at 8 or 9 o'clock that night, because there's one bus that drives back kids to LA after everyone has had an opportunity to save for different projects, programs, sports. So you didn't get home. So you lived there and just came home to sleep. So, in asking what has that done for me as a leader in the district now, it makes it a real job and how we truly all impact our students. What each of our administrators do and don't do really impact all of that community, whether it's our children who are ditching, not coming in, failing, language, families, all of the social things that occur that are out of our control but are our norms. Every one of us has an obligation to remember them and be able to give them the opportunities to succeed and do better, which has given me the passion that I've always followed. And I stick to Monica, I stick to these leaders because I know they're the ones making the difference. And if I'm there aligned with them, then that's just making that community better and giving all of those students an opportunity. So a lot of that is just working from the heart, working to improve, and truly making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And I share your Pico Union pride. Okay, now I'm going to pass it over to Ana Alvarenga.
Hola, bueno, Mónica dijo
Hello. So Monica cheered for Roosevelt High School. Yes, indeed. And my name is Ana Alvarenga. My story begins in 1985 when I arrived to this country with a one-year-old daughter. And we lived in a closet. It was difficult. It was not a healthy environment for my daughter. She would cry and she wanted to get out of that place. We could not be there any longer. So we would go out all day. I would take her to the park all day, and then we would just get home at night to sleep, because at that house, we were not allowed to be in the common areas. We only had a closet. We couldn't be in the living room with the rest of the family. It was difficult. So my leadership really began when I decided to struggle, work hard, regardless of the day of the week. Even if it was a Saturday or Sunday, I would work hard to give my daughter a worthy place to live. And with my mom's help, I was able to do so. So that's when my leadership started. And that's where I met my husband afterwards. Now I have 3 beautiful daughters who have also graduated from that school, from Roosevelt. And that has been my path towards leadership, and something that has really strengthened me. And in my years, and my role at the school is sharing with parents and listening to different stories. But most of all, it is my daughters. It's them. They are the ones that said, "Mom, what are you doing home? Go and support us. There are things that the school needs, and there are things that need to change." So they are the reason I do what I do, and they're right. Although they are no longer in the group of Students United, I've been there now, and it's been 15 years now since I started, and since I've been a leader for Lucha del Pueblo, also as a coordinator, also in Promesa Boyle Heights. I try to help in any way possible. And if you want to be a leader, that this is what I want to share with you, is do it with love, do it with passion, do it because you really believe in change, in positive change, because it's not only about helping and making things complicated. No, it's about simplifying things as you help. In my family, in my community, this is something that has really worked. And frankly, I do not plan to stop anytime soon. I want to continue here at Boyle Heights and other schools, fighting to effect change. No.
Gracias, gracias, Ana.
Thank you, Ana.
For those of you that are looking for the closed caption, you actually have
Y
to click
quienes
on it.
quieran ver los subtítulos tienen que buscar el botón que está al pie de la pantalla.
So now we'll pass it on to Rita.
You are, is it the first question? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So my journey, I think my political journey, my leadership journey begins really when I went to what is now Chicano Youth Leadership Camp Hess Kramer in 1968, right after the walkouts. I was pretty silent. I observed, I watched, and I saw a lot of things. And by the end of that academic year, in spring semester of '68, I dropped out of Roosevelt. But my counselor got me into Upward Bound program at UCLA. Mr. Castro was a teacher there and program director. And he, I consider him to be the father of my education in terms of he encouraged me to apply to UCLA. They were launching a special admissions program, and I worked with students there. I was in the Upward Bound program, and eventually was able, and in fall, I was accepted into UCLA, and I started my career, my academic career. It was a long journey. But I really think that one of the most important lessons I learned from Mr. Castro and many of the activists with whom I engaged back in the late 60s and through the 70s and in the political groups that I was involved in. One of the things I learned that kind of moves me to tears as I think about it, because this isn't at all what I planned to say or what I had been thinking about earlier, is really how much Mr. Castro cared. And I had the opportunity to meet Cesar Chavez, and it was the same thing, a humble, kind man, could be tough, but who cared. And when I met Dolores Huerta, and I met other women, when I worked with the East LA Rape Hotline and met the women there, when I met women who were social workers, not like the DPSS kind of social workers, but social workers who cared about justice and equity, words I now know, but then I didn't use. I think I was profoundly influenced by that, and I think one of the attributes or one of the characteristics that served me throughout all the years and all the different kinds of leadership positions I've had in the community and on campus has been the ability to really be grounded in values and to have had teachers and mentors who lived and practiced their values. And I think when I had some really challenging times or tough times or times where you feel defeated or you feel like you just want to tear your hair out or you feel like you're hitting your head against the wall, it has been those values, that caring for the community, that concern about education, that I'm sitting right now in my living room and I'm looking at Cal State LA from my living room. And a lot of my activism the last 25 years, 27 years has been on that campus, advocating for the precise kind of students that Mr. Castro supported. So I think that gets at some of those issues that were in that first question. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. And we're going to now go to Hilda.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm such a rule follower, Anna. You said if you're not talking and if you're not on, turn off your camera, turn off your audio. So it's great to see everybody, and it's great to be seen. And thank you to my co-panelists. Such wonderful stories. I want to share the story of my family as well. Many of you have heard or read about me. I'm a child immigrant. I came to this country at the age of 11. And my life is very marked by my family, who are my leaders. My mother has led our family through immigration from one condition of poverty for another condition of poverty. I grew up on a dairy farm. I had a beautiful childhood there because I was free to run around, and I came to live in a small 2-bedroom apartment that at times had up to 15 people. So you learn to use your space wisely and quickly. I find that to be a challenge sometimes with people who I'm around that don't have those experiences. But my younger brother, who could have been my twin, we were only like 11 months apart, suffered from mental illness at a young age. And in our 20s, became very different. I started to notice changes in him. We were both going to college. I was at Glendale Community College, and he was at LA Trade Tech College. And he came home one day telling me a very strange story. And I recognized in him right away a difference. When I talked to my mom and my sister about it, they at first didn't believe me, but then they quickly realized after talking to him that something was wrong. So we took him to General Hospital. And of course, free healthcare, county hospital. We waited hours to be seen. A couple of doctors came out, read his file quickly and told us, oh, just take him home. He's probably drunk. And I said, wait a minute, you didn't even smell him, talk to him, or look at his eyes. How could you determine this? And they said, well, he's male, he's Latino, he's in his early 20s, he's got to be on drugs or on alcohol. And I said, you have to test him. I want proof. And my mother was horrified that I actually went up against the doctors. She was ready to take him home and blame it all on him because, many times we pathologize the people, not the conditions. And so sure enough, they came back a couple of hours later and they said, you're right. He doesn't have anything in his system and we think it's a mental health condition. And he was taken in for a 72-hour hold. For the next 8 years, I spent my life taking care of his health care and was made his guardian, his adult guardian. And it taught me that having language is access. It taught me that questioning power is not the worst thing in the world. It taught me that poverty has serious impacts on families that we don't always hear about. And it taught me that it's important to have a health care and a safety net system that works for everyone, not just some. And all those lessons of my brother are always with me. Unfortunately, he took his life after 8 years of battling a mental illness that was always really undiagnosed. He's the reason that I do what I do. He's the reason that I'm a fighter. He's the reason that I don't stand down. It has cost me jobs. It has cost me relationships, but I will never apologize for being an advocate and a voice for him and many families like ours that find themselves in a new country with new rules, new systems, new ways of engaging and they don't know how to do that. And so I share that story not to make you sad and not to bring, pain, but really to uplift us all to remember that there are many families like mine. I happen to have been born with courage. I have been born with a loving structure and a family that, while my mother was horrified that I went up against the doctor, she also realized later how important that was and how much that was needed. And so, I stand here before you today proud. And Monica, I owe a lot to. She's always taught me to be courageous too. We go a long way back. I'm so sad to leave LA, but I'm also excited to lead in a new place. And no se dejen, sí se puede. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. And standing up to power is not the worst thing in the world, for sure. We got to do more of it. We got to build that muscle. Thank you for sharing. So now I'm going to go to Marilyn. Oh, you came on right on time. Hi.
Hi, everybody. So like Hilda, it's about love and just finding your place and space. And so I'm so thankful to public schools because I went to public schools my whole life. Even we were in the suburbs of San Diego. It was a public school. Went to UC Berkeley, my Go Bears, Miss Garcia, and then UCLA, and then Cal State LA for my master's, and just finding my people there. And with my maiden name Rodriguez, everyone assumed I spoke Spanish. So I said, I better learn Spanish so that I can communicate with others. And just, I want to give a shout out to my leadership journeys, 6 men and 6 women, so the dozen who are current or past LAUSD, and the first one is my incredible husband. We met at UCLA, and he taught over at Manual while I was at Jefferson a demo, and just there I got to meet the incredible Phil Saldivar. And working at the East Building and being in the Phil Saldivar room, knowing that he trusted me as a student teacher from UCLA to teach English as a second language, and gave me he took a chance on me as a student teacher, and it was incredible. And then Superintendent Brewer came along, and he taught us about International Baccalaureate. And I thought, what is that? You know, and I knew it in private schools in the suburbs, but not in public schools. And so really championing International Baccalaureate for all students. And then that connects me to boss, Superintendent Local District Central, Roberto Antonio Martinez, is an incredible rock for me. And with him, I got to meet Steve Austin, the amazing just leader at LA High for so many years. And then my journey back to Local District 5 and East, where I got to meet Dr. David Baca, who changed my life. So incredibly thankful for him and his wisdom and just Detroit style. He's hilarious and smart. And the women, Dr. Frances Gibson, I was ready to leave LAUSD. I said, there's too much bureaucracy. I was going to Long Beach Unified, and she said, you know what, we have a new teacher coach position, and I think you're ready to mentor the next generation of teachers. And so I did that, and I got to meet Paulina Rock. And if you don't know her, she is a rock star in many, many ways. She is the champion of Schoology and of all students, pre-K through 12. If you don't know Nati Rocha, you better meet her. She's one of the 2 retired women I'm celebrating. Nati leads with heart. She's so smart. She reads everything. So get a book list from her. Rosa Maria Figueroa Calderon just retired in February. She's my heart. She reminds me what leading with kindness looks like. You can never assume what's happening. And then my comadre, Leslie Coleman, amazing teacher. She's a Spanish teacher at LA High, and now she's at university. But all 12 of these people have shaped my 4 beautiful daughters that I will talk about more. But they all graduated from our school, and the journey of how could a principal be a parent and a leader at the school where their kids are. And I said, you know what? It's about building a school for all. And I'm going to build the best school for my children. So our public school is incredible, 7 through 12. We don't have it's not always easy there, but we have tremendous successes because, again, we lead from here, corazón, la alma, soul, right? Because every kid matters, and we don't know everyone's story. So just like Hilda was talking about, don't make assumptions about people. Get to know them, know their story, know their light, know their laughter. And so thank you, Monica, for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. So important to share our stories and to hear their stories. And, you know, we're all role models, and in some capacity, we're all mentors, and we should embrace that, and we should celebrate that, because a lot of kids are looking up to us. We're going to pass it on to we have Jennifer. Where are you? There you are.
Hi everyone, Jennifer Maldonado. I am also known in my community as JMO. Really glad to be here and just to share some of my journey that has tested and shaped my leadership. So first I'm going to start with this throwback shirt. It's the United Students, all power to the students. And that's actually where I started my politicalization of my community, of my family, of who I am. So I'm going to share two of my earliest experiences. And so one began as I joined this club at Wilson High School. I was a junior, and this club, this youth program, comes out of inner city struggle. And I began to learn and really reflect on myself, on my family, and my community. And the first test that I got from United Students was to give a classroom presentation. Now, if you could imagine a 16-year-old, very shy, learning these words like systemic oppression or colonization, trying to understand the world, and then giving a classroom presentation, I was very shy, nervous. I judged myself. I was thinking how my peers are judging me. But what really tested me was my belief in social justice. And I did those classroom presentations. And I was urging my peers to sign a petition to bring more funding into the East Side and South Side high schools at the time. This resolution was called the Quality Education Investment Act, and we won it. We won because students from the East Side, from the South Side, organizations, parents, all came together and we rallied, we tabled, we phone banked, we had delegation meetings, and my confidence was just shook. I felt what people power felt like. You know, there's one thing to see people power, and there's one thing to be there and be there chanting and be there with people that are struggling to make a change. And we won. So that really cemented for me how I want to change my communities and how I want to change my school. And that really just set off a spark. And I became a lifelong organizer into higher education. I went to UC San Diego. My first year at UC San Diego was a national racist incident called the Compton Cookout. There were several racist activities that took place after that, such as a noose was hung at Geisel Library, a KKK hat was put on some of our statues, and a student had a swastika put on their dorm. And she was an African-American student, part of the Black Student Union. And for myself, I was like, this is not okay. And I'm already coming in as this youth organizer, and so I started to create community. I started to really understand what it meant to be a first generation like higher ed college student in a university that was historically not built for youth of color, not built for undocumented folks, not built for indigenous folks, because UC San Diego sits on indigenous burial grounds. And so the second test that I got in college was to occupy the chancellor's office. And I'm this freshman, like I'm gonna get arrested or expulsion. My parents are telling me to come home, and I just knew I had to stay in solidarity, in the struggle, because the fear was real. I was afraid, but the pain that we felt as students of color, as first generation, as undocumented students, as indigenous students, as transgender students, was greater than that fear, right? And so there were just so many chants that I could remember, and the one that's just so engraved in my memory was when we would scream, "Whose university?" and then everyone would reply, "Our university." So it really made me believe that wow, we could be accountable. We could hold these systems accountable to the justice that we deserve. And I hear that with even the parents that I worked with later on. And I also had the privilege of working with Senora Alvarenga at Inner City Struggle, because soon after I graduated with my bachelor's in ethnic studies and a minor in education, I returned to my community. I went back to Inner City Struggle. I started working with youth in my community at Wilson High School, at Lincoln High School. And I saw the fire in this young generation, the fire that I also still carry with myself. And I've guided so many generations of youth to really become lifelong agents of change, just like myself. And also the parents that are always by our side. And we could see this through the long history of time. And so what I really learned, what it showed me about myself, how I emerged from that adversity, was to pay it forward, right? I learned all these skills to change my community. I am going to teach other folks how to feel that power, how to feel that solidarity to change our conditions, right? Right now, during COVID-19, young people are pushing, families are pushing for this federal government to hold them accountable for the people that are struggling the most. Right now in Minneapolis, with the murder of George Floyd, there are young people on the streets right now during COVID risking their lives to make a statement to stop police brutality. We have people closing down detention centers because of the health impacts, right? So there are people power everywhere. And I think for myself and just being here on this panel has been such a pleasure, such a reinvigoration, because COVID-19, we're all feeling the blues, we're all feeling the isolation, but I'm also feeling the hope that we are going to be the phoenix. We are going to change what needs to be changed, because it's long been overdue, right? We've come 100 years of voting. Now we need to really push harder on the ballot. We need to really push our decision makers to reflect the justice that we're demanding and that we're taking. From the streets to our communities, to the universities, to everywhere. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you so much for hosting this. I really appreciate it.
Anna, can I just say Jennifer is not related to me, but I wish she was.
I don't even know what to say, Jennifer. I'm just inspired by just hearing your story and feeling your passion. So thank you. You keep us going. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Monica to continue with the questions. Thank you all for engaging me in this part of the panel.
Absolutely. And I feel like if you were going to be a board member, Jennifer is a dream come true. That's the vision walking. I love hearing Mylene saying, I want a school good enough for my kids and I'm going to build it. So all along we heard passion. We heard working from the heart. We heard working to change our reality. Our daughters, Ana told us, my daughters are going to have a different experience and inspire me. So here it is. I want you to think about, what would you have told yourself 10 years ago? What do you wish you would have known 10 years ago? Si estamos pensando, ¿qué nos vamos a decir de la Ana de 10 años? So right now I'm 52. If I think about what would I want 42-year-old Monica to do, I tell everybody to breathe, right? Sometimes Monica gets a little passionate. She forgets to take a breath. But I'm wondering, what would you, I'm going to ask three of you. Ana, quiero saber. Ana, I'm going to give you the floor. What would you want to tell yourself 10 years ago to help your process?
Buena pregunta.
That's a good question. 10 years ago, wow. I would like to tell myself, Anna, as a mom, you have not failed. I was always feeling guilty because one of my daughters was about to not be able to graduate high school, and I was feeling very guilty. You work so hard, your daughter is not getting to achieve her goals. She has 17 absences in a month. She was not going to school, and she would do my own signature. They were signed by me, but she would sign them. And I felt guilty about that. And she finished high school. Maybe at that time, I would have liked to hear that. Someone to tell me, you're not guilty because you are taking care of her and you're making sure that she graduates high school. And then she finished college. She did not continue to university. And now she says to me, you did a good job. I'm a fighter. I believe in changes. And she's very positive. She's lovely. And now I know that I did everything that she needed for her to be able to achieve her goals.
Beautiful. I'm going to go to the other mom, and maybe we have a few other moms, but I want to hear from Mylene. Mylene, I'm so glad you stayed in LA Unified, and thank you for lifting the people inside of LA Unified who help other leaders. But what would you have liked to just share with yourself 10 years ago, or realization?
So I would have only been 20, right? Just kidding. I think I would have told myself to give myself a break and say, you know, working moms don't have to work twice as hard as everybody else. Working moms can work the way they work, and they should be mothers when they're mothers, and not to say that folks that don't have kids, that your time isn't the same. But I feel like my time with my kids so fast. I mean, they're all graduated from high school. They're all in college, or one graduated from college. To really enjoy those moments. I feel like sometimes women, especially moms, feel like they have to do more, and they can't say, oh, I can't. You know, I wish I said more, said no to more things, and said yes to more things for my kids. Because even though my husband and I would talk about swim meets, you know, they swim like this and then you're done, right? I would give anything to go back to a swim meet and sit by a pool and be with my kids. So I think it's right now is especially important that we look at the work-life balance. I mean, especially for principals, we work all the time, you know? So what does that time look like? So this weekend, I literally closed my laptop, put it in my backpack, and put the backpack in the corner. And I didn't open it. And I don't care that I had 250 something emails Tuesday morning, but I was present with my family. And I think even, you know, working husbands, the same thing. You don't have to work all the time, right? Like, who said that, right? I think healthy people have balance. And so that's what I would told myself 10 years ago, balance, you know, you don't have to be a superstar all the time.
Thank you. Ana Reyes, let's hear from you. 10 years ago, what kind of wisdom would you have liked to offer yourself?
You know, it took me a very long time to be taken seriously. So everything that I had endured in my young life, laughter and humor got me through most of it. And what didn't get me through it was my Bell's palsy, which is a paralyzation of the left side of my face. So most people get it once in their lifetime. I got it 4 times. And I, you know, still certain days or angles, depending on what side you're looking at me on, you can tell that I'm smiling or I look like I don't care, right? So communication became something I had to learn to do differently so that you would understand that I'm either joking, kidding, serious with you, or focused on what, you know, the real serious work was. So if I, you know, when you work with someone like Richard Alonso and you know, were mentored by him, a lot of times it felt as if jobs or positions were given to me because of that. So to tell myself to set my own expectations not too high, and it's okay that I was not able to always succeed at everything and prove everyone wrong, right? So communication, understanding that communicating to those around me to understand that I'm really on your side, letting them know that I'm trustworthy and I will work hard for you, and loyalty is in my middle name. When I interviewed for the admin assistant position at the local soups office, and it was a panel of all the local soups and all the AOOs, so it was a completely intimidating floor and room. And you're sat in the middle and everyone's at the same space and they're asking you all of these questions, and they said, is there anything you want to add at the end? And the immediate thing that came to my head is, I will take a bullet for you. And so in my world, and understanding administrators and the difficult task that you have, to know that that administrator needs your support 100% was the most important thing I can try and convey to you. And for them was like, what does that mean? Like, you take a bullet for me? And so till this day, they all remember Ana Reyes. They didn't, you know, I got picked, but it was just funny that it was like, I don't have to take myself so seriously and give myself permission to fail and be okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. And shout out to all the LAUSD grads changing the world. So Ana Reyes to Jennifer Maldonado. And I have to say, we had in the chats or the questions, so many women just saying, thank you, ladies, for sharing your story. One woman said, you know, I need to be a fighter for, she called them underachievers, but it's really for people who look at traditional success or traditional students. All of us can share a story of how we had to push ourselves in or we refused to be left outside. But the question I want to ask you now is, what can we do to support and grow other women leaders in our spaces? And Rita, you're someone who has that inside and outside strategy. You've been able to take the violence, those microaggressions that Francis Baez touches us about, and turn them into strength. And I've seen you publicly over and over again being willing to call out the oppression, the discrimination, the absence of investment. Tell us, how do you think we could support other women to have their voice and use it and you know, grow strength in activating their own talent?
I think part of it is believing in people's capacity and trusting in people's capacity. And again, I think it comes down to values. I mean, I look at all of us, and we all have embedded within us, and we are connected to a whole network of other people who all have embedded within them a story of suffering. And yet, despite that suffering, we are here. Despite, you know, the obstacles, the challenges, the hurts, the pains, we recognize that we have capacities, that we come from communities where there are capacities, that we come from people who have capacities, who have beliefs. And so I think we have to practice that and lead with that and engage with others. Yesterday, I was meeting with 3 young women who are in new positions of leadership. And I said to each of them, you know, we're in a Zoom meeting, and I said, I want you to know, 2 words to these effect: I trust you. I trust your judgment. If you need to make a decision, make the decision. If you feel it's the right thing to do at that moment, do it. I trust you, and I want you to know I trust you. We can talk about it afterwards. If it turned out not to be right, we'll fix it. If it turned out to be great, we'll build on it. But either way, I think we have to lead from the position and model from the position that we truly do believe in the capacity of others. We truly do recognize. I said to somebody else, you know, some of the women that we work with, despite all their capacities and all their strengths, and I've done this myself, we might be differential. Or we may have deep thoughts, and sometimes those thoughts might be marked with negativity or hostility, but we know how to filter it. We learn how to filter it
Yes.
So that we achieve our goal. We get to we move further down the path where we want to go. We're in your face when we need to be in your face, and we are unwavering all of the time. And so I think that's what we have to model, and we have to cultivate, and we have to tell the young women that we're working with in the next generation, it's fine. You can do it, and you need to do it. And I think one last thing very quickly, you know, some of you know, I'm also, you know, Oglala, Lakota, right? And my mom, who just passed, you know, her whole life was shaped by being an Indian and being a child in the boarding school and having that experience. But within the Indian communities, there's this belief of the seventh generation. Like, we don't do things for us. We do them for what's going to follow 140 years from now. And when I think about when I started teaching, women who were 20 then, they're 40 now, 45, 50 now. They have their own kids, they're mentoring. We're always in the middle of the seventh generation. It's not like we're waiting for something off in the future. We're always in the middle of it. And I think we have to look at everybody with whom we engage, all the women with whom we engage from that perspective. Anna's in the middle of it. You know, Hilda's in the middle of it. We are all in the middle. And we all have the opportunity to look back and draw on the strengths. You know, Hilda, think about your mom. I mean, all of us can look to somebody and we can think about, hey, that's in my DNA too. And now I have these choices that I can make because that's in my DNA. And then
I get chills listening to you, dude. I get chills. I'm going to ask Hilda next. Hilda, you have been, you know, gifted with a great opportunity. How will you grow leaders inside and outside your new system?
Wow, that's such a great question. First of all, thank you, Rita. That was powerful. You know, I've been learning from you. There's my English learner language. Here's what I think. We don't tell each other enough as women. You are enough right where you are. You're brilliant. Mm-hmm. You are courageous. Continue to be humble. Continue to have faith and have no regrets. And I have found that the young women that I have had the honor to mentor in my career and that I see, my wish is for them to just go beyond me, to do more things, greater things than me. But I also find that we lack an ability to be vulnerable with each other. And I'd like to offer for us that being vulnerable, it took me almost 40 years to tell the story of my brother because I felt shame. I felt guilt. And it's common for people who have those who take their lives, those who are left behind, to feel guilt. But beyond that, it took a lot of vulnerability and acceptance for myself to be able to tell that story. And so I just want all of us to find that one story and tie it all right back to it. So that is why I do what I do. It is through that experience, and not be afraid to be vulnerable. I also think we lack the ability to be open and honest with each other and transparent. Anna and I had a chance to work together. I know she'll talk about how I, you know, helped coach in some of the things, and she helped coach me. She would literally take me into my office and say, stop, I need you to breathe. You're too upset. This is not the time for you to make a decision. And I loved her for it because nobody would stop me. So be open, be honest, be transparent, be vulnerable, be courageous, be enough, and find others like yourself and lift each other up. I'm very cognizant of time, so I'll stop there.
Breathing it in. Breathe it in, ladies. Breathe it in. J-Mo, going to you, sister. How can we all, let me ask you, what do you do to support other leaders and grow women leaders in your space?
Yeah, I think this is such a beautiful question because for myself, I have developed such great friendships based on trust, based on vulnerability with so many folks from elementary school to high school to college that are still in my life. I've had friendships since then, since I was 7 or 10. And so I feel like I have definitely fostered these friendships to really reflect how I'm navigating through the world and how they're navigating through the world. And it's really about creating community. I think because the society we live under right now is such, like, it's very heteropatriarchal. It's very much led by male dominant, by rape culture. And I think as women, and especially Latinas, there's this stigma of biting our tongue or quedando en la cocina, like, and I think for us to really cultivate community and be there for one another and challenge these norms or these social expectations of us just feels so powerful. And for myself, it was mentoring youth. And then also when I worked with parents, it was a mutual mentorship, because I could learn so much from parents as much as they could learn from myself. And then also just really participating in autonomous groups where women come together and really talk about how they're navigating through this professional realm and how we're afraid and we're really just trying to learn and grow and contribute. And so I give a really big shout out to my amiga Evelyn from Aspiration Tech, who I met through organizing for community planning, justice with inner city struggle. I met her through a coalition, and she created this space where she brought different women to the table, now virtually, of course, geographically spread out throughout the country, to talk about what it means to be a professional, or what it means to build our capacity to keep going and keep fulfilling a lot of our vision to our careers, to our community, to our family. And so I think it's really building community and really building friendship and really challenging the society and how it's ingrained in us. I think for me and my other friend, we were talking about sacrificial love, how Disney really screwed up my generation. And how, you know, what it really comes down to is how we do our self-work first, how we do our self-love first, and how that gets transmitted into our relationships, into our friendships, into our community, into how we see our neighbors, or just anything we do. So definitely, I think it's based on what Hilda was saying earlier. It's just being vulnerable and being there for each other.
Mm-hmm. Courage, beautiful, gracias. And you know, ladies, we've got, this is we've set a record in Changing Conversation Land. Over 100 people joining us right now. And I wanna thank everyone that we heard from, because your voice resonated and is sending love out into the universe. I can tell you that my leadership journey is absolutely impacted by Kung Fu Panda. I was watching the cartoon with my niece, and the guy says, if you want to be a master, you got to have inner peace. Inner peace. Where do you pick that up? But you are absolutely right. We have to do that self-work to help us do that community building that you so beautifully talked about. Okay, Ana.
Gracias. Wow, yeah, this is just amazing. Thank you all for sharing. Now we're going to move into our Q&A section. And just a reminder that at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A icon where you can put in your questions. And we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. We have about 20 minutes. So let's see what's in there. And then I will ask, I will put it out to the panelists for who wants to answer the question, and I'm going to take at maximum 2 people per question. So we have Virginia Soto, who is giving some context of being part of early struggles to advance education for Latino students, being part of the parent community representative in LAUSD, has 2 students that have gone through LAUSD. So her question is, why after all of this work and all of these struggles from back in during the walkouts, have we not made the progress that we thought we would be making so many years later, 50 years later? Anybody want to take that one?
Anna, I'll take it. And the reason I'm taking it, Anna, is because like you, I've been working on a doctorate degree at Loyola Marymount University. And I've been looking and doing some research around the history of Latino education in the United States. And I want to say that in my research, and by no means am I a doctor yet or close to being one, so please don't take my words as gospel, but I have looked at some of the civil rights that were won during a time period in this history of this country that were really eroded in the 1980s and beyond with the federal government's rules around the supports for our Latino students. And I say Latinos because while we are not a monolithic group of people, many of us are Spanish speakers. Many of us navigate two languages, maybe sometimes not perfectly, but there was a lot of federal government protections that were won where when it came to language rights, whether it was, you know, we can't test children for special ed in only English. And if some of you don't know that, up to the 1950s in this country, we tested children in English only. Actually, I'm sorry, up to the 1970s. We tested children in English only for special ed, even though they were English language learners. And so of course, you know, if I was tested, I probably wouldn't have done as well myself. Up to the 70s, we treated children who spoke another language as if they were equal to an English proficient speaker, and we gave them the same teacher, the same books, the same learning conditions. So it's only been the last 30 years that we really started to look at some of these issues through a different lens. And we are far from being close to creating curriculum, assessment, instruction, teacher development, administrative development that really looks at not just the culture of the student, but the language of the student in a way that really informs us that teaching is an act of communication. Teaching is an act of exchanging language and thoughts through language. And so I believe that there has been a push to get rid of so many of the civil rights we've won. And so, and another part of what I've learned around education systems is that we've often treated civil rights issues as black and white issues. But civil rights issues are also Latino and white issues, and we don't always talk about that. And so while I personally am one that wants to change the system from the inside, there are others that want to change it from the outside. And I think working together, doing an inside-outside strategy, which Monica Garcia is famous for talking about, is the way that we're going to change the system. But we also have to help ourselves. And it has to be something where we have to look at aspects of our culture that maybe prevent us from encouraging each other to get an education. Sometimes we bring shame to students if they want to aspire to an education. Sometimes we want to put the family before the individual, and going to school requires sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice of family time. So there's lots of things that we still need to do. We're far from it, but let's not be fooled by the idea that just because we have an education system that it's perfect. And there's lots of federal and state rules that still prevent our students from achieving. And it takes, you know, all of us coming together. I personally am going to be on the Jennifer Maldonado ticket to support her when she runs for office, because she understands these issues from that broader perspective. So I know it was an academic answer, but you know, I just wanted to share some of that learning. Look into the history of education. Yeah. It's so important we understand it from that way.
Yeah. And I'm with you on the Jennifer Maldonado bandwagon. We're all going to be there with you, Jennifer. I'm going to pass it over to Rita.
Sorry. I think one of the issues too is that we really have to connect. We can't look at education and we can't look at experiences in a vacuum. We really need to make the connection to the context and the structures wherein we live. Our community is still poor. Our children do not have adequate education. Our families are undocumented. Children are, I mean, we can do the litany of all of the injustices that exist in this community and in this Western world, this California. Let's just say LA County. And of course, LA County can't be disconnected from the state or from the federal government. But until we address the substantive structural issues that give rise to these conditions, okay, I'm probably the oldest one on the panel. I'm 69. I was 17 and 68. A lot of things have changed. And a lot of things underneath and structurally have not changed. And in fact, they're more profound. Since 1968, when I was 17, what do we have? How many more generations? How many 7-year-olds started school since 1968? Already malnourished. Already, you know, and we're always so good, and our interventions all the time are all focused. And right now, what's the rage and the vogue is everybody's traumatized. Everybody's traumatized. And it's true, there is a lot of trauma. But when we say, oh, all the children are traumatized, oh, they live in violent homes, they're so traumatized, oh, their parents are documented, they're traumatized, we lower our expectations. And we say, oh, it's that family's problem, it's that kid's problem, it's that community's problem. And we never say no. Like at Cal State LA, I'm looking again at campus, right? We say, oh, these freshman students, they can't function, or our students, they can't achieve, or they have so many adversities, they're so burdened. But, oh yeah, they are. By the lack of faith that you have in them, and by your inability and your unwillingness to meet them where they are and to move them. Cal State LA is struggling with online education. Okay, we could tell them for years, yeah, our students, you think they're online because they have a phone. That's not computer capacity. That's not crossing, a phone is not crossing the digital divide. If you want, or if you recognize our students are burdened or are disadvantaged, not from their fault, by the structural conditions that exist. Our students are disadvantaged because they don't have a laptop like mine, or like the one that sits in an office someplace, then frickin' give every freshman student a laptop when they enter school. I mean, you know, so of course, what does this call for? It's policies. It's not just what's happening in a school or in a given district, it's the underlying social policies that exist. And when that last question about suffrage, you know, how does the voting rights affect us? Mujeres, if we do not frickin', and I'm not saying I'm a fan of anybody who's running, but if we do not turn out the vote, up and down the ticket, we are participating in the destruction of the world for my grandchildren and your grandchildren. We have to figure out a way how to get mobilized and to be mobilized and communicate that importance to our neighbors.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have another question, and most of the people that have joined us today are wonderful women leaders, and we're not surprised to get this question. Let's see. The question disappeared. Where did it go, Teresa? Okay. How have you challenged the misconceptions that a strong Latina leader is bossy or makes emotional decisions, or some of those other negative narratives? So I'm wondering, Jennifer, what you would have to say to that. I'll read it again for you. How have you challenged the misconceptions that a strong Latina leader is bossy or makes emotional decisions, or some of those other negative narratives?
Yeah, and I think this question is amazing because it goes back to how society is viewing Latina women, or even how we might be projecting it within our culture. And I'm just thinking about, in terms of how to dispel that, is it really comes down to challenging the one-on-one, right? The interpersonal, and then challenging also the structural, right? So if I'm challenging the interpersonal, if I am personally feeling like there's misconception or there's an assumption about me, then I think I have the tools. And this is also about communication, as some folks have said. How do we communicate what we're feeling? How do we communicate where we're coming from? And I think I love what Ana Reyes said earlier is like, you're in this room and it's very intimidating, right? And how do we present ourselves that we leave a lasting impression for other folks? And this impression could challenge that misconception that strong Latina leaders are bossy or make emotional decisions. Because we obviously see these leaders who are Latina in these positions that are leading with logic, that are leading with data, that are leading with the equity framework. And I've seen Monica Garcia do this, right? Monica Garcia, when she is in that boardroom, right, however they may judge her, she is leading with the facts, she is leading with the stories, she is leading with her heart. And at the end of the day, she's challenging these misconceptions. And I think even these conceptions are really created to pit even each other against each other, right? This competitiveness. United States has this culture of individualism, of competitiveness, of meritocracy. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps and no one else, leave everyone else behind. So how do we start to teach the next generation how to challenge that? How do we teach the next generation how to talk through that? Because it's going to come out in our music, it's going to come out in our movies, it's going to come out in other, misconceptions that we hear from other family members. And I think it's really giving the tools, really communicating how to challenge those misconceptions on an interpersonal and also relating it to a structural level of it's happening from this institution and it's playing out in real life right now, right here. And I think I really see it and even when we talk about Cardi B, I'll relate it to a pop culty. I'm really not into pop culture. I really get my pop culture from my bestie. But really, when she talks to me about like Cardi B and how powerful Cardi B is and how much of a boss she is, it's because Cardi B has taken this platform to really talk and really relate to people. And there are certain other on the flip side that are trying to, either pit two other women of color against each other, like the Nicki Minaj and Cardi B fiasco, right? That was coming from top down. So for me, it's like these women of color are breaking into industry. They should be helping each other. But how are we building the generations to do that? And so I'll stop there just for the sake of time. And I really hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. And again, that goes back to being a role model and mentorship, which takes me to the next question. And I'm going to give this one to Ana Alvarenga. How did mentorship play a role in your leadership life?
Gracias. Sí, ser mentor lo que me ha llevado a mí.
Yes, this is an environment that has led me to growth as a leader in my community. By helping others, that's what makes a leader. To me, as Roberta Menchú has shown, she is someone who is humble, and every leader has to be that way at one point or another. We have to be on an even playing field with others, and the union of many different leaders will always help all of us to be on one same page and to really make a difference in terms of what we want to achieve. I've learned throughout this time that I am strong, and that something that all leaders should have is a lot of patience, because we're always going to have to face a lot of opposition. And opposition should not stop us. We should continue moving forward, even if others close doors on us and they mistreat us or they are not treating us right. That should not keep us from continuing moving on. If one door closes, we move on to the next door, and so on and so forth. They will open a door ultimately. So that is what has helped me to grow. And I would like to see all of us practice that, being humble with each other, all community leaders, so we can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And patience and not giving up and being relentless and having that sense of urgency, but understanding the challenges and the barriers that we face. Mylene, I'm going to give this one to you. How did you cope and overcome the oppressive male voice that can squash your spirit and your creativity when their insecurities take the best out of them?
So when I was thinking about this question, it's really about finding allies and advocates, because there are men who will uplift us. I have the most supportive husband in the world, but there are also women who will not uplift us, right? So finding your allies and advocates in whatever shape, age, size, one of the things about leadership is in schools being student-centered. And what does that mean? And one of my mentors talks about Team Kid. When I have a very difficult decision to make, I think about, well, what does this mean for a student? What does it mean for the family? What does it mean for their neighborhood and their community? And as long as we remember to put students at the center of any decision, it'll be hard, but that's what matters, because we're here, and I think that's the hardest part right now for teachers, principals, counselors, nurses, everything. Our schools without students, I'm dying, because I miss my students, right? I miss standing in the quad. I miss athletic events. I miss concerts. I used to stand in front of the school and greet my students and then say goodbye when they left. And this virtual, going to a Zoom and I see students' names, I'm so happy, right? But it's because of students, right? And so when anyone's oppressing or says something, I have to challenge them and say, where's that coming from? Like, what perspective are you taking? What leads you to believe that that's right about me, right? You don't know me, right? So to challenge. And it's hard because I think about Filipina American leaders in our district, and I think about 5, like there's more Filipinos in LA, and what are we doing? So how do we encourage and uplift all people to be leaders so that we can come together and make our educated populace leaders like Jennifer? And so just going back to, there will always be allies and advocates, and it's about finding your people and uplifting your people, and then addressing and confronting just the ignorance that's out there, and that comes from education. It comes from knowing your history and knowing that through education is how it's that liderazgo. I can't think of la palabra en inglés. Whatever, liderazgo. That, we need it.
Leadership, definitely. And finding your people, I think, is really important, and having that support group that builds. And that's going to lead me to my last question for Ana Reyes. What influences you to be brave and show up for yourself and other mujeres when it's really hard?
I would say it's always that drive of our kids. That it's cliche, but it's very true. And knowing that we're making a difference. All of us, it's our responsibility in whatever capacity we're living in, and not feeling like it's competition, that that we can't pull ourselves past us, right? Because women, once you get to a certain level of power, it's like we don't know how to propel further past us and have them be more successful than us. So what drives me is really knowing that I'm making a difference. And making a difference means partnering with that administrator, that division, that team, that we're making an impact and we're really moving the district forward, and not just, thinking anybody can maintain, right? Anybody can be selected to do a job. But our true leaders and administrators, can you make a difference? What has changed? What are you doing thinking outside the box to challenge you? If you're just maintaining an office and a division, and you're just, keeping with the same momentum that the last administrator did, how are we moving our district forward? And how are we challenging each other to really make a difference? And not to always work in lanes, but some of us need to, Monica, where are you? Some of us need to start crossing each other's path. You know, you're the one que tú puedes hacer todo. Tú allá, start making the divisions, start crossing each other, so that we're not also like stuck on a lane, that we forget that we're more powerful together. And Jennifer's words, all of us can be untouchable. We just need to remember we're partners and not competitiveness against each other.
Absolutely. Gracias. And it's that drive, right, to make a difference that brought us together today. And, you know, I just wanted to share a little bit about a book I'm reading, which is called More Than Ready by Cecilia Munoz. And one of the points that she makes is that, unfortunately, we're still, while we're all here together and, you know, we share this common bond of being women and being women of color, a lot of times we're the only one at the table, and we're the only. And how important it is to find that inner courage to represent when you're the only, and to always uplift the voice of everyone else. We talked about policy, we talked about, you know, sort of being patient and change over time, but we have to do it not just within our communities, we also have to get out and have the courage to do it outside and push others to really think, if not seek to understand the real issues that impact our communities. And so encourage you to look into that. And at this point, thank you all for participating. I'm going to hand it over back to Monica.
Well, how fabulous. You know, there's so much energy. We have other questions. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? We have so many questions about things that can't be answered quickly. They require more conversations. So I'm gonna invite you all to reach out to one another. This has been tremendous. Thank you all for your stories today. Thank you for your leadership, your wisdom, your bravery. We have all been inspired. I want to just lift a couple of the questions where I'm gonna paraphrase. How do we teach men to not be threatened by women? And you know, ladies, I'm gonna remind you, we are learners and we are leaders. And you know, you learn by doing. So whatever limitation people have, we just have to challenge it and find an ally, find a comadre, find a mentor, find someone to stand with you when you need a little backup. But they are these notions that are not accurate. I just want to say that out loud. They may have the power today, but they are not accurate. And we just have to find that so that we can continue. Thank you, Ana Ponce. Thank you to all of our panelists. Guess what? We might do this again. We might do it virtually. We want to continue to build spaces to support one another. There is a lot of fear in our neighborhoods. As we think about how to open schools and businesses and organizations and colleges, I'm going to tell you there are no good answers at the moment. But there are a lot of people with heart. There's a lot of people with a lot of, you know, brains. But what we all need is to each of us find those 2 or 3 or 10 comadres that are going to join and get involved. So from voting to the census to, you know, the class of 23 is coming. I told Rita I'm taking my 7th generation with me. I am reminded tonight that love is our superpower. And love is really underneath all of that si se puede that is in our soul. So I had a question about how do we envision education 10 years from now? I love that question. Let's keep the conversation going. Adelante, mujeres, there is a lot to do. Be kind to yourselves. Remember to breathe. There is a poll. Teresa Cortez, great job. BD2 team, great job. There is a poll people want you to fill out because we want to do this again. So we want to hear from you. Okay, 6:58. Here's the poll. Did you find the event informative? If what kind of topics would you like to hear about? And what type of topics? And who would you like to hear from? I'm so inspired that every time we ask somebody, please come share your story, very rarely do they say, no, I don't want to. Women are filled with generosity and desire to help and support. So gracias, 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 gracias. Fill out the poll. Thank you for joining us. We love you. Take care. And congratulations, class of 2020. We love you too.
So thanks, Mark. I just saw the note.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So it should be functioning back normal.
Yeah, you should be good. If you're gonna present again, just reach out.